11:47 p.m. The phone line crackles softly in the dark. A woman's breath quivers on the other end. And then, a sentence, quiet, controlled, almost rehearsed, slips into the night. "My husband, Matthew Johnson, he's missing." It was a call that should have sounded frantic. A wife worried, a mother terrified. But instead, Jennifer Gledhill's voice was steady, too steady. And investigators would later say that everything in that moment, her cadence, her timing, the eerie calmness behind her words, was the first clue that something was terribly wrong. Because at 11:47 p.m. that night, the fate of Matthew Johnson had already been sealed. Before we continue, remember to like this video and subscribe for more real true crime stories. Matthew Johnson was not the kind of man who simply vanished. A 51-year-old Green Beret with the Utah National Guard's elite 19th Special Forces Group, he lived his life with discipline, precision, reliability. He was the soldier people called when they needed answers. He was the father who never missed a birthday. The husband who tried, again and again, to keep a failing marriage afloat. And yet now, he was gone. No trace, no phone, no vehicle. And standing at the center of it all was his wife, Jennifer. Their Cottonwood Heights home, valued at over $1 million, had long projected the illusion of perfection. A successful military husband, a stay-at-home mother, 3 young children. Neighbors saw them as quiet, stable, almost idyllic. But images lie, and behind those walls, a storm had been gathering for months. Divorce had been looming since July. Their texts, later reviewed by the courts, told the story of a marriage breaking apart, thread by thread. Jennifer belittling him, taunting him, pushing him toward reactions he refused to give. By August, Jennifer filed a protective order claiming abuse. But when Commissioner Russell Minus reviewed the evidence, he saw something chillingly different. The videos she submitted, they showed her standing tall, unafraid, confrontational. The texts, berating, demeaning, calculated. The commissioner dismissed her claims, calling the marriage highly dysfunctional, bringing out the worst in both parties. But noting no abuse occurred, he warned, prophetically, that they should have filed for divorce long before reaching this breaking point. What he didn't know was that Jennifer had already chosen a different path, one far more irreversible. In the weeks before Matthew's disappearance, his friends noticed something unsettling. This man, a trained Special Forces Green Beret, had begun sleeping at a National Guard facility. Not for work, not for protocol, but for safety. Jennifer's behavior, he told them, was becoming unpredictable, disturbing. He didn't feel safe in his own home. And yet, he kept trying, kept planning for divorce, kept preparing to start over. Then came September 19th. 2 days before the murder, Jennifer showed her lover a secret relationship she had been nurturing, a loaded Glock 19X. At the time, it might have looked casual, normal for a military family. But prosecutors would later say this moment mattered. Because Jennifer wasn't just cheating, she was planning. She arranged for her 3 children to stay with her parents the night she intended to kill their father. She prepared the house, she prepared the lies, she prepared the story she would tell. Everything was in motion. September 20th began like any other day, but it would end with a house echoing with screams and the shattering of a marriage that had been unraveling for years. Matthew confronted her that evening. He knew. He had found out about the affair. What followed was a storm of accusations, decades of resentment erupting into one final argument. Neighbors heard the shouting. No one knew it would be the last time Matthew's voice was ever heard. And in the early hours of September 21st, while he slept, unaware, exhausted, Jennifer picked up his own 9mm handgun. She walked toward their bed. And what she did next would launch one of Utah's most chilling murder cases in decades. But what no one expected was that the truth wouldn't slip through police interviews, surveillance footage, or forensic tests. No, it would come from her own mouth. For a moment, imagine the scene inside that house after Matthew Johnson took his last breath. The silence, the stillness, the cold, calculated focus of a woman who had already crossed a line she could never step back from. According to her confession, Jennifer didn't hesitate. No panic, no breakdown, no moment of regret. Instead, she moved mechanically, almost ritualistically. She dragged Matthew's body from the bedroom, sliding him down the stairs inside a rooftop storage container. A detail so specific and bizarre that detectives later said it stood out as one of the most chilling aspects of her confession. She placed him in the back of their minivan. She smashed his phone. She drove his truck to a nearby neighborhood to stage a disappearance. Then she headed north, far from Cottonwood Heights, toward a lonely stretch of land where she dug a shallow grave in the dark. Somewhere out there, Matthew still lies, undiscovered, and when she returned home, she didn't sleep. She cleaned bleach across the walls, carpet cleaner on the bedroom floor, scrubbing, wiping, erasing. She ordered a new mattress just 72 hours after the murder, a decision so blatant it would later become a cornerstone of the prosecution's case. But even after all the planning, even after all the lies she rehearsed, Jennifer made a mistake no killer should ever make. She told someone. On September 22nd, one day after the murder, she appeared at her lover's house, pale, frantic, and covered in bruises. She sat down and she confessed. The whole thing, in explicit detail. Her lover was horrified. This wasn't the woman he thought he knew. This wasn't the quiet, homebody mother of 3 he had been seeing. This was someone else entirely, someone unrecognizable. So, fearing he might become her next victim, he made a decision that would change the case forever. He hit record. The next conversation between them contained some of the most disturbing statements investigators had ever heard. When he told her he was scared of her, she replied, "Wow, if you think I could even hurt a fly." Then, with ice-cold detachment, she spoke of Matthew not as a person, not as a husband, not as the father of her children, but as an object. He wasn't a person anymore. He wasn't Matt. She even joked about her Queen of Hearts attitude. "Off with their heads," she said. These weren't slips of emotion. These were glimpses of something darker. But the part that investigators found most telling was when these calls happened. At this point, Matthew hadn't even been reported missing yet. Jennifer was using the past tense, describing him as already dead, even though no one else knew. The timeline was unraveling, her cover story was slipping, and soon, everything she tried to hide would pour into the open. Because the next person to learn the truth was the police. But what no one expected next was that the walls of Jennifer's carefully constructed lie would collapse almost instantly. Not through detective brilliance, not through forensic luck, but because the one person she trusted most turned against her. On October 2nd, 2024, Jennifer's lover, terrified, guilty, and unable to carry the secret any longer, walked into a police station and handed over everything. Screenshots.txt, recorded phone calls. He gave them the story Jennifer thought she had buried along with her husband. And once police had her words, they knew exactly where to look. The search begins. 6 days earlier, on September 28th, police had responded to Jennifer's missing person report. She told them Matthew had suddenly said he would be gone for a week and not to call him. But things already weren't adding up. The Utah National Guard had been looking for Matthew since the moment he missed duty on September 23rd, something he would never do voluntarily. Jennifer didn't report him missing until 5 days after the military raised the alarm. That alone was suspicious, but investigators had no idea just how dark this would get. Inside the house, when police executed a search warrant, the first thing they noticed was the smell. Bleach. Strong, recent, overpowering. The master bedroom told the rest of the story. Beneath the bed, they found a large bloodstain soaked deep into the carpet. Reddish-brown splatter dotted the walls, blinds, and bed frame slats. And in the middle of the room, a pristine, untouched mattress. Brand new. Phone records confirmed Jennifer ordered it on September 24th, 3 days after Matthew was killed, and it arrived just 2 days later. Every detail matched the timeline described in her recorded confession. Detectives didn't just have suspicions now. They had proof. GPS doesn't lie. Investigators pulled GPS data from Jennifer's phone, tracing her movements on September 21st and 22nd. The digital trail was damning. 6 a.m. She drove to the location where Matthew's truck was abandoned. Later, her phone tracked north toward Davis County. The route aligned perfectly with her claims about where she buried Matthew. The body still hasn't been found, but the path she took was unmistakable, and there was more. During a search of her parents' home, detectives found a Glock 19X gun box wrapped in a child's onesie, the same model of gun Jennifer showed her lover 2 days before the murder. Her parents, Thomas and Rosalie, claimed they were at Jennifer's home less than an hour the day after the murder. Phone data and surveillance said otherwise. They stayed 5 hours, long enough for a cleanup, long enough to move evidence, long enough to implicate themselves. Rosalie had her phone wiped clean, remotely reset, deleting all location records. Thomas let something slip during his interview. "I did not go in where the incident happened." Police hadn't mentioned a crime scene location yet. He revealed it himself. Within weeks, both parents were arrested, charged with 4 counts of obstruction of justice. The family had closed ranks, and in doing so, they exposed themselves one by one. The case tightens. But the most shocking discovery wasn't in the house. It was floating in water. investigators found a vehicle storage container, the same type Jennifer used to move Matthew's body, and inside it, Matthew's blood. It was the final puzzle piece. On October 2nd, the same day her lover confessed everything to police, Jennifer Gledhill was arrested and charged with first-degree murder, 5 counts of obstruction, abuse or desecration of a human body, controlled substance possession, witness tampering. But even behind bars, the story was far from over, because there was one final secret, one she hoped would never surface. And when it did, it turned the case from tragic to utterly devastating. But what no one expected was that even after the arrest, even after the evidence, even after her own recorded confession, the most devastating part of this case had yet to emerge. Because while investigators were piecing together Jennifer's movements, while search teams combed through forests, fields, and back roads stretching from Davis County to the Utah-Idaho border, one truth became impossible to ignore. Matthew Johnson was still missing. Not just gone, not just murdered, but hidden, somewhere in the vast northern landscape, alone, unmarked, unreachable. And with every day that passed, something became painfully clear. Jennifer knew exactly where he was. And she wasn't talking. 5 months of searching, and nothing. Over 70 searchers, law enforcement, volunteers, and Matthew's own brothers-in-arms from the Green Berets have spent months chasing leads, conducting grid searches, analyzing soil, mapping likely burial zones. Some of these soldiers served beside Matthew for more than a decade. Many had watched his kids grow up, and every day they returned to the field, hoping to bring their friend home. As one of them said, "The fact that the search is in its 5th month keeps us up at night." The terrain is brutal, the distance is enormous, and the only person who could point them to Matthew's grave remains silent. Jennifer has pleaded not guilty, despite the recordings, the blood evidence, the GPS trail, and the mountain of circumstantial proof. She faces 1 count of first-degree murder, multiple obstruction charges, witness tampering, abuse or desecration of a human body, drug possession, and a looming trial set for December 8, 2025. Prosecutors argue she's dangerous, manipulative, and capable of further violence. The judge agreed, denying her bail. She sits in Salt Lake County Jail today, waiting. But the story doesn't pause there. The final blow. Matthew carried a $500,000 life insurance policy. Jennifer was the beneficiary. But when the insurance company learned she was charged with his murder and that the body was still unrecovered, they asked the court to decide who should receive the payout. Because legally, morally, spiritually, nothing about this case feels resolved. 3 children have lost everything, a father stolen, a mother consumed by choices she refuses to admit. And somewhere, in a place only Jennifer knows, a devoted Green Beret lies waiting to be brought home. In the end, the most haunting part of this case isn't the lies, or the cover-up, or even the coldness of the crime itself. It's the silence of a mother who refuses to reveal where she left the father of her children. The silence of secrets buried under Utah's cold northern soil. The silence that may keep Matthew hidden forever. But cases like this don't fade, they echo. If you want this story to stay alive, if you believe Matthew deserves to be found, stay with us. Because somewhere out there, the truth is still waiting to surface. Subscribe for more true crime stories that refuse to stay buried. And remember, justice isn't guaranteed, but together we can keep searching.